Generally speaking, people are dissatisfied. This dissatisfaction might materialize in a number of ways. The most mundane way is that people believe that money or more success in the world might bring them some satisfaction. Of course it never does, because whatever a person has, they always want more. But the most poisonous dissatisfaction is the dissatisfaction with existence as it is. This brings about a search for meaning, maybe, purpose, some preferred state, and there are plenty of people selling preferred states, namely enlightenment, awakening, moksha, endless number of names for it. The reality is our dissatisfaction is a curse, and society doesn't help in that we are fed images of people who are, in the eyes of the world anyway, more successful, more popular, more famous, have more power, all those kind of things. And people believe that those kind of things will deliver them from their dissatisfaction. But it's not the case. As Schopenhauer points out, wealthy people who really no longer have to strive are bored, and so they flit around from one place to another, from one thing to another. So there's really no satisfaction in what you might call worldly gains. But the most poisonous pursuit, I suppose, is that of believing what the spiritual people say. That if you do X, Y, Z for the next 10 years or 20 years or however long, you might reach some state of awakening or enlightenment. And it's always portrayed as some wonderful thing. Well, of course it is, because if somebody portrayed enlightenment as being some dreadful state, nobody would buy it. Nobody would be interested in the workshops and the videos and the books and all the rest of it. So it has to be portrayed as some preferable, pleasurable kind of state. At the end of the day, we wouldn't go pursuing those things if we were satisfied. We'd just say what is probably the truth, that these people are just selling something, and is probably a crock of rubbish. The whole spiritual thing is a little bit like somebody coming to you and saying, well, let's say you go into a car showroom, and the guy says, well, over here we've got a car that can travel in outer space, but first you have to give me $200,000. Now, would you believe that? Because you've got no proof that this thing can travel in outer space. And maybe you're gullible enough to, if you've got it, to give the guy $200,000, and it's got a nice little plastic dome on the top where you can look at the stars, and it's got kind of Thunderbirds jet things on the back, and you take it out and it does none of those things. None of us would do that, I don't think, but we will believe some guy saying, well, if you do X, Y, Z for the next 20 years, you'll achieve some state of more pleasurable existence, enlightenment. The reason it's poison is because it makes you very dissatisfied with where you are, here and now. This belief that there is some preferable state. You only have to have a look on YouTube. There are dozens of so-called gurus selling their notion of some more pleasurable state. The only true guru out there, in my opinion, is U.G. Krishnamurti, and he rubbishes the whole thing. In fact, he goes as far as to say that the traditions in India particularly were set up by acid heads who just took some mind-altering substances, had some peculiar experiences, documented them, and now they're taken as scripture. Is he right? I really don't know. I actually don't care all that much. But the reality is a lot of people do believe all that stuff, and they can pursue it all their life and get absolutely nowhere. You know, I get a reasonable number of emails from people saying, well, I've been doing, I don't know, some Vedanta practice or something like that, and it goes nowhere. If it goes somewhere for you, then so be it. But I'm talking about the average person, the likes of me and you, who basically have two modes of perception of the world. One is a physical perception. The other one is our mind, our ability to reason and understand. If you believe that there are more dimensions to us than that, well, go find them. I think the chances are you're going to be disappointed. I do get comments on here from people, and I get emails from people who say if you saw life from a higher dimension you wouldn't talk as you were. Well, I don't have a higher dimension. I've got a body and I've got a mind. That's all I've got. And I imagine most people on here have that, a body and a mind. They don't have some kind of higher dimension. Anyway, our dissatisfaction can come from a number of causes. You know, one cause being that we have thrust in our face the means to become satisfied from our consumer society, but also from spiritual and religious people. We have stories and myths and beliefs that some kind of practice or some kind of belief system will deliver us from our misery. But the reality is our misery very often just comes from childhood conditioning. You know, if your mother or father is always putting you down, you will grow up pretty unhappy. Actually, the opposite is true. If they're telling you you are the most wonderful thing on the planet, you'll grow up unhappy because nobody else will think that, and so your expectations will not be met. So the baggage that we have is emotional to a large extent. We get it from childhood conditioning in the main, but also from our interaction with people in society, our peers, our teachers, our workmates. And we also have mental baggage in the form of belief systems, various attitudes that we've adopted. All of this is baggage, and you know, I'm not implying that you can just go ahead and drop all that stuff, but there is a way to deal with it, which hopefully I'll make clear later. What we need to do to live a more satisfying life is to drop our search for a more pleasurable form of existence. I'm not, of course, referring to, you know, you've got an abscess on your leg, so you go to the doctors, obviously. Or you haven't got enough money, so you try and get some more money. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this whole idea that there is some mode of existence that can be got through some kind of spiritual belief or practice that is more pleasurable than the life we're experiencing now. That will make you very, very dissatisfied. What people also need to drop is their censorship of their reason. Because if they applied their reason to much of these claims about a superior kind of existence, they wouldn't even go there. They also need to drop their dissatisfaction with themselves. You're fine as you are. Of course, there are lots of people telling you that you aren't fine as you are, but you are fine as you are. You can't do anything about it anyway. You know, if you try to change this habit, you'll get a different habit. If you try to become loving and kind, you'll probably end up being bitter and unkind. So you're fine as you are, don't try and change anything. A lot of this is about expectations. Again, expectations are set by people who claim some kind of route to a preferred mode of existence. But I'd strongly advise that you don't listen to, or at least if you do listen to, take it all with a pinch of salt. Look, I shall say this more than once. Your life, as it is, right here and now, is all you've got. This is it. Your struggling to get away from it will only make matters worse, because you go into a kind of denial about what is happening here and now. Anyway, I'll get onto that a little bit more in a moment. You need to drop your belief that you are a free agent, that you're not part of the whole of the universe. Of course you're part of the whole of the universe. The rest of the universe has given birth to you, in a physical sense, through your parents. And in a psychological sense, the rest of society. The rest of society has filled you with the ideas and beliefs that you have in your mind. So you are a product of the environment, effectively. Yes, of course you're born with certain genes, but you got those from your parents. You are not a free agent. You are a highly conditioned, very specific thing. So you need to drop your belief in free will. Now, I've dealt with this in previous podcasts. All I'll say about free will, and I know this is very terse, is that to believe in free will, you have to believe that you are a totally unconditioned thing, and that your decisions are based on no prior influences. In other words, to put it in a very terse sense, to believe in free will, you have to believe that there are such things as causeless effects. So when you decide to buy an ice cream, there are no causes involved in that at all. No conditioning, no nothing. Not the fact that it's a hot day, or the fact that you like sugar, or the fact you like cream. None of that conditioning goes into it. The decision was wholly made without a cause. If you can, again, this is something that UG talks about a great deal. You have no free will. You are a part of this huge machine called the universe, and the universe has conditioned you and made you what you are. It's futile to try and struggle against that. The implication of that, of course, is that you can just rest back. Some people would say go with the flow, because you don't determine what you are or what's going to happen. You have no control over the rest of the universe and how things are going to influence you. Of course, saying go with the flow doesn't mean that all of a sudden it all becomes pretty and nice. Going with the flow might mean some fairly unpleasant things, but that's life. I'll say more about that in a moment as well. What you need to drop above everything else is the belief that there is something special. If only you could meditate enough, if only you could get enough money, if only you could follow this practice, that you would arrive at some special kind of place. There is nothing special in this whole universe. The everyday, mundane existence is fine. And in fact, that's all there is anyway. A lot of people will not like that, because they believe that if they do this or do that or acquire this or acquire that, then they arrive at some special place. The idea is special. The idea of special is poison. Don't follow it. So, having talked about some things that maybe you should drop, there are a few things that you should acquire. The first one and most important one is that you should come to understand yourself and the world. I'm not talking about, well, you can if you want, understand the biology of your body and all the rest of it, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the things that drive you. What is it that drives you? Well, I've talked about this before. The things that drive people are the desire to survive and the desire to procreate, which manifests in the sex drive. It doesn't mean that they will procreate, but the drive is there anyway. So you need to see that you are driven by these things. What that means is that anything that diminishes you a bit in life, threatens your existence, even marginally, will affect your mood, your emotions. So you lose your job, you feel a bit threatened maybe. Maybe you think you can't pay the rent or something of that nature. Or if something happens that reinforces your existence, so you win $1 million or, I don't know, you get a good promotion at work or something of that nature, then you'll feel good, probably. And so you can see it's a very easy mechanism to understand. But the important thing is, can you apply that to your life? The next time you feel down, can you look at yourself and say, well, I'm down because my partner has just jilted me or something. Or I'm feeling down because, whatever it is, something that's affected your status in the world in terms of your survivability. That's the important thing. Can you apply this? Because none of this is worth anything unless you apply it. That's why you have to practice it. It has to become your lifestyle to understand these things. Another thing that you need to acquire is an understanding of the world. So that's an understanding of yourself. An understanding of the world. You need to see that basically the world is indifferent to you. I mean, yes, of course, your mother, your father, maybe your siblings, whoever, may care about you. But outside that closed little community of people, the world is indifferent to you. Whether you get run over by a 40-ton truck tomorrow or not is of no importance to the world. There are thousands of people being massacred in Ukraine at the moment. Does the world, existence, care about that? It would seem not. If it did care about it, it would stop it. So, you use your intelligence to make life as satisfying for yourself as possible. And the reality is, there's nothing more satisfying than understanding both yourself and the world. Because that's an endless task, you'll never reach the end of it. And as you do more of that, so you gain some sense of power in your life. You're not just a leaf blown this way or that way, depending on the wind. I mean, very closely linked to that is the notion that you're not special. So, there's nothing in the world that is special anyway. To have $10 billion doesn't make you special. You can fall prey to cancer, as indeed did Steve Jobs, just as much as anybody else. You're not special. There's nothing special. This existence that you're experiencing right now is it. If you go chasing the special, you will be dissatisfied with your life as it is. And as I mentioned, I'm not talking about things like, well, there's a job opportunity for a bit more money. Well, yeah, of course, take it. Or I need to get my teeth fixed or something. Do those things, but those are not special things. They are just maintaining your existence. So the point of this, well, there are 2 points really, are first of all, you need to drop a whole pile of things, a whole pile of expectations and beliefs that you have. Expectations or belief that you have free will. The expectation that there is something special to be achieved. And you need to acquire what is really just understanding of the world and yourself. And that alone will make life more interesting and enjoyable. There's a lot of power in understanding. So you need to drop this idea that there's some distant promise, some pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The purveyors of the fairy tales have to tell you that you will achieve peace, that you will become satisfied, content, that you'll know bliss. They have to tell you that, because otherwise you wouldn't pursue what they're trying to sell. The reality is that life is both awful and at times pleasurable. That's the reality of it. And you need courage to live a life from that point of view. To go chasing after fairy tales, well, anybody can do it, and millions of people do it. I'm not being critical of them. Many people probably need it because their lives are so dire. But you need courage. So I haven't gone into the realities of our life very much, but I'll say a few things just at the end of this about it. Here's the reality of your life. So, from the moment you are conceived, you basically start to die. Your body is a decaying item. It doesn't matter whether you're 2 years old or 80 years old. Your body will be decaying as it ages, fulfills its function, which is basically to survive and procreate. Then after procreation, if you do have kids, your body kind of accelerates its rate of decline to when you die. So you could summarize life by a very short statement, really. Life is basically just a series of pleasures and pains, and then you die. And what exists after death? Well, nobody knows for certain. I mean, there are lots of people claiming they know. But the reality is that consciousness and experience are the same thing. If you have no experience, then you're not conscious. If you have no consciousness, then you're not experiencing. So when your body winds down and all the things within your body that might experience, your mind and your emotions and your sensory sensations, when all that dies, then you no longer have any experience. Hence, you no longer have any consciousness. And the Buddhists believe that consciousness is one of the 5 aggregates. It disappears when the body disappears. As I say, it requires courage to see life in those raw kind of terms. But all that happens is life actually loses a lot of its threats. A lot of its, it becomes less intimidating if you can face these things with courage, instead of running away to the promises that are made by the charlatans who are promising some more pleasurable state of existence if you cross their palm with silver and go in their workshops and all that kind of thing. Anyway, I hope that's been useful.